The St. Louis Civil Rights Enforcement Agency works to remedy discrimination and enforce equal opportunity throughout the city. Joining us today to explain the purpose and work of the agency is its director, Charles Bryson. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure as always.
I really appreciate your time. I know I was just asking if you were getting any sleep. I know the work of your agency is nonstop, and so I really do appreciate you being here.
No, thank you.
I want to, before we get into some of the details, you have some really good data from 2019 that I want to cover and what you're going to focus on this year. I want to take a step back and make sure that people really understand what the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency is and what it does. Maybe you could start us off there.
Sure. Well, we enforce federal, state, and local fair housing, equal employment opportunity, and public accommodation or disability laws, rules, and regulations. And we do that through when people call in or write in or email us with a claim of discrimination, we'll do an investigation to see actually if they have been discriminated against by one of those means, especially local law in the city of St. Louis. And then if that's the case, then we will work with them to have some sort of recovery or relief if possible.
Okay, and you, as an agency, and when you're investigating these cases, you're working and collaborating with other different organizations and departments?
Absolutely, from everywhere from HUD and Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the local office, to maybe the Metropolitan Equal Housing Opportunity Council, to AARP, which will be one of our strong partners coming up, to a myriad of organizations that we work with to make sure that the laws are being followed.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's take a look back at, we should say, for 2019. I have a very thick printout of your annual report. We can't get into all the details of it, but a lot of cases that you had here, and maybe you could kind of give us an overview of some of the work that was done in 2019.
Well, I think a lot of it started out with outreach. The Board of Aldermen passed, and then former Mayor Slay signed into law a bill around discrimination based on source of income from landlords. And so what Mayor Cruzen said when she came on board was, we need to have some serious outreach and education in the community, and then after that, we will begin to really enforce this vigorously. So I and my team of 7, or 6 others, I should say, went to 85 different events talking about fair housing. Obviously, we cover all of it, but predominantly was fair housing, speaking engagements. And we also created a podcast called Civil Rights and You, where we touched on a lot of issues around landlord and tenant relationships. We talked about a myriad of civil rights issues, public accommodation issues, equal employment issues. And now this year will be, in 2020, will be a strong year of enforcement. We had a relationship, you talked about partnerships. We partnered around source of income discrimination. We partnered with Facebook and tried to get them to understand what that was about for the city of St. Louis in terms of source of income, and that people, landlords and property managers shouldn't be able to advertise that they don't accept Section 8, because in fact that is against the law in the city of St. Louis. As we talked earlier, from Skinker to the river, that's against the law. And they were more than kind and generous and helped us out with, I'm sorry, no, I said Facebook, I should have said Craigslist. So they really helped us out with that situation, and now you see a decrease in the total number of ads. They still exist, and we still go after people, but they have reduced greatly.
Interesting. That's really interesting. So you covered some of the areas that, I mean, when you look back at 2019 and you're talking about fair housing, what were some of the other, I mean, again, when I look at this annual report, there's a lot of areas that you cover, the bulk of it being housing and employment. Is there any other area that was sort of, you saw on the rise in 2019?
Public accommodation. We met with a number of groups around disability rights and how to educate the community on disability. One of the things is what we call right-of-way. And the fact that in a lot of different areas of our city where you see restaurants, they have what we call high tables and chairs, where the chairs are really high and the tables are real high. People who have a disability, especially a mobility disability, they have the inability to go and just scoot up under there because it's so high. So we sent out almost 100 letters to restaurants over the course of the last 2 years, advising them of the ADA guidelines. I'd say we got about 98% compliance. We're going to continue that to this coming year in 2020. And we think that is a strong part of what we need to do, is to make sure that our the least of us, meaning those who have disability, have the most ability to go and take life as we choose to have it. So yeah.
I want to get into, when we come back from break, kind of what you have on the table for and the plans for 2020, but also talk about some stuff with human and sex trafficking that happens here in St. Louis as well. Before we go to break, you can check it out on the screen. The Civil Rights Enforcement Agency, to reach out to them, you can call 314-622-3301. Again, that's 314-622-3301. But don't go anywhere. We're going to have more with the City of St. Louis Civil Rights Enforcement Agency right after this break. Stay with us.